Hi friends, I'm Pam and welcome to A Scrappy Little Joy. I brought some treasures with me today. First question I have for you. Please tell me I'm not alone as I knock things over. I'm a box person. Anybody else a box person? Mr. Woods got this in the mail the other day. It's like a grill for, we have a camper, and so it goes up in the ceiling, and it's a replacement grill, and it's a new fancier grill. Anyway, but I was just so excited about this box. Look at this lovely on the back. See how much surface area that is? It's just a nice big piece of cardboard. I like boxes in general too, just regular boxes. Look what also is here. Hang on, let me show you. Mr. Woods recently got a new monitor for the back room. So I just snatched the box and I stuck it right under here, under my table. So I can make design boards. Look, friends, many of you have asked me about how I put these design boards together, and you'll see they're nice and sturdy. We can buy these at the store. I know, already pre-made, but the cool thing about these is I make these with a piece of cardboard and some elastic, and I'm going to show you how. The cool thing about this is these are washable, and that's my favorite thing, because you know, sometimes I have lunch on my little design mat, and while I'm sewing, Mr. Woods makes me lunch. Sometimes he'll bring me lunch to my studio, and so I like these to be washable for lots of reasons. But anyway, we've got a supply list here. You see if I can put this together. Now also, ahead of time, you know how I love to sew with you the whole project, right? This is a little bit of a longer project, and so what I've done is I've created some ways to speed us through this, okay? First of all, you'll find down in the descriptions, always friends, if you are not familiar with my videos here at A Scrappy Little Joy, along with the Weekly Whim, which is a channel, or which is part of my channel here. It is a Wednesday block video. I always put the supplies list or the cutting charts in the description. So you'll find this one for our design board today. What you are going to need, and I've got it all laid out here, what we're going to be doing is making, now you'll note I've got all these different sizes. I make these, sometimes it's just about a pretty piece of cardboard. And you know, full disclosure, I have a stash here. I like the pretty pieces of cardboard with rounded edges. I've got a few of those. So sometimes my design boards are born of the size of cardboard I have, a piece of cardboard that I like. Or I'll cut one that I like for a certain size. But 9-inch design boards are lovely if you are making a 6-inch block and you want to lay all your parts out, right? So, and it's also small enough for us to get started with a little tutorial here today. So that's what we're going to be doing. What we need is, if we're making a 9-inch design board, we need an 8.5-inch piece of cardboard, kind of sturdy, you know. The sturdier it is, the better your board's going to hold up, the stronger it's going to be. You also are going to need two 10-inch pieces of quilter's cotton. You could use flannel if you like. Design boards, some design boards are made, the ones that you buy are made with flannel. My challenge with flannel is that it collects lint and threads and all those kinds of things, and I appreciate its value for not wanting, if we don't want our pieces to slip off, but usually I'm not carrying my board around like this with my pieces on it. I'm carrying my board like this. So I like it for things to be able to brush off them, threads and that sort of thing. That's why I like just a little quilter's cotton. So two 10-inch pieces of that, and you've got a 10-inch piece of just quilt batting, this leftover quilt batting, whatever you've got. And what you also need is a 12-inch length of 1/2-inch elastic. Now also I should tell you, if you are looking for some of these supplies, I have a good amount of these supplies, like the Hera markers. You'll need a Hera marker. Let's go to there. This is one kind of Hera marker that has a little pointy end. Sometimes those are nice if you're turning or if you want to use it as a stiletto. And it's got a smaller paddle. I like this sturdy one, so that's another one. You need a ruler. You need your 12-inch piece of elastic. I said that. Oh, I know what I was saying. I do have some of these things. If anything that you see in this video, you're wanting to know if it's available, if I've got it in my shop at Serendipity Woods, there's a link right in the right in the description below that points you to a place in at Serendipity Woods called the A Scrappy Little Joy store. Okay, so you'll find anything there that I talk about here that I would have available there. So, okay, we've got these things. We've got our ruler, and we've got a width of fabric 2.5-inch strip folded in half. This is just going to be our binding, right? And that's going to be enough for a 9-inch design board. You would need more if you want to make a bigger one. Okay, and so then let's go ahead and set these things aside and get ourselves a little bit organized here. So first things first, let's take our 2 pieces of fabric and our piece of, oh, one other thing we need, and our piece of quilt batting. We've got that. Quilt basting spray. You're going to find these, you're going to find that probably at your local Michael's store, that type of thing. Or your local quilt store might have it in stock as well. But this is how we're going to stick our pieces together. There's instructions on, depending upon what kind you find. I think they're all pretty comparable in terms of type. But you're going to want to do this in a well-ventilated area. You're going to want to spray on that first, you're going to want to lay that first one down, first piece down, spray on that, and then we're going to lay our piece of quilt batting on top of that. I'm going to spray on that. We're going to lay our second piece of quilt batting down on that, okay? And then that is going to look like, you see, this is what I'm saying. I got a little bit ahead of myself to try and make things a little bit easier for our little project here. So now that's what we're looking at right here. So we've got our little sandwich of things that are stuck together. Now here's where we need our Hera marker. Let me find, I use this board, it's just a slightly wider board, but what you want is a board ideally that is as long or longer than your piece from corner to corner, okay? So what we're going to do is line up our ruler so we can draw a line right down here, right down the diagonal on the center, in the center. I'm going to use my Hera marker, which is going to make a crease, not a line. So if you see, I've made a crease, and that crease sticks around, okay? So we are going to use those creases as our sewing guides. Next up, we want to scooch our ruler over by a 1/2 inch. Now this is where you're going to want some indirect light, because if you've got straight down on you light, you're going to have a hard time seeing. But if you've got some indirect light, you're going to be able to see that little crease, and you're going to be able to put your 1/2 inch line right on that crease, and then you're going to draw another line, okay? And then you've got that, and then you can draw a third line, and you see that I'm going from right to left. For me, anyway, I'm a lefty. You may be a righty, and you'll want to go left to right. And then once you get all of these drawn, all of these Hera creases made on this side, then you'll just turn your piece around and you'll do the same thing, and you'll go the other way until you've got a full piece where all of your where you've got diagonal lines running in one direction all across your piece. And look, we've got that right here, okay? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our piece to our machine. Take my shoes off because you know I can't sew with my shoes on. And we're spending a little time with Jane today. And so what we're going to do is line up that center line under our presser foot so that we can sew a seam right on that line. I've also increased my stitch length to about 3. It's a little tough for me to figure that out with Jane because she's an older machine. I don't have a knob or buttons necessarily. But anyway, so then what we're going to do is we're going to sew right on that line. And as we're sewing, we want to keep our fabric moving through as straight as possible so that it stays nice and flat. Get a little ender here. Okay, and now you see as I pull this off the machine, I've sewn it like that. Now let's turn it around like this, and I'll explain to you why I'm going to do that. Let me get one more line in there, and then we'll sort of start to move along to next steps. But there's a reason that I am alternating which direction I'm going as I sew. Okay, so I'm going to pull it off like that, and then I'm going to turn it again. And I'm going to sew on this line. And the reason I'm doing that is because the more I sew just in one direction, if I were to just pull this back and just keep sewing, 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 and not alternating sides or direction, I might get twist in my little sandwich here. And I'm trying to keep things distributed evenly. I'm trying to keep my my batting, my little quilt sandwich, because this is really just a little quilt, isn't it? My little quilt sandwich evenly dispersed without a lot of twisting. So I'm going to leave that in there. And you'll see I already have 3 sewn lines. And then I'm just going to continue to go back and forth by switching it around until I fill this whole thing with seams going in this diagonal direction. Look here. Done. Okay, so you'll see that I've gotten all of my seams going in one direction here. And then what I'm going to be doing is taking my ruler and look, going in the opposite direction. Same way, just like we did before. And I'm going to go all the way in one direction or all the way in the other direction, whichever way you want to go first or second, doesn't matter. And then we are going to have, look at, we've got our sewn lines going in this direction and our creases going in this direction. And so then, obviously, we're going to want to sew right on those creases, just the way we did with our first round of sewing. Ta-da! All of it's done, all right? So now we're at the point where we want to trim this, all right? And this is a 10-inch piece, remember, but the good thing, see, we've had just a little bit of shifting here as we've gone along, and that's why we want a little trimming space. So this is a 10-inch piece. We want it to be a 9-inch. So I'm going to just go skinny, skinny on this side, just a nice straight line as I'm squaring this up. And then if I know that line is nice and straight, then I can line that up here and on my 9-inch line. And if this line is nice and straight here, and this line is nice and straight here, then I can take it this way and make sure that any line on my ruler is nice and straight. And I'll just take a little bit off of there. So nice and straight there, nice and straight here. And then we can trim this side to 9 inches. Okay, right? And then we have our little mat ready for the elastic. Where's my little elastic piece? Don't I have one? Yes, I have an elastic piece right here. So we've got our 12-inch piece of elastic, and we want to cut that into 4 equal lengths of 3 inches each, okay? And then, once we have that, take a look here, you'll see I just laid each piece of elastic on the diagonal and done a little tack here with my seam. I'll go forward and then go back, just so that's nice and sturdy in there on both corners, both edges, all the way on all 4 sides, okay? And then we are ready for our binding already, if you can believe it. Where is our binding? Here's our binding piece. I'm going to go along and just sew this binding on as I normally would any quilt or any mug rug, any mat or anything. And I'm just going to sew this binding all the way around, and I'm going to finish it like normal. I like to sew all the way, I like to machine sew my quilt binding to the front, and then I like to bring it around back and do the hand stitching part. But we are then looking at our little design mat, which looks just like this. And if we've got an 8.5-inch piece of cardboard, what you'll see is that it is just slightly smaller than our edge, so that our edge hangs over, and it gives a little extra hug in there because this edge comes around. But again, this can be washed a bazillion times, and you can, if your piece of cardboard gets tired, you can get a fresh piece of cardboard. And again, you can make these in any size you want, big, small, whatever suits your fancy. The cool thing for me, look at all these design mats that I have to finish up with my binding of choice. And so thank you, my friends, for giving me a project to allow me to get a whole bunch of them done in, a weekend. So I'm going to do that, and I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. If you have, I hope you will click that subscribe button. I'm really enjoying bringing these videos to you, bringing you the Weekly Whim every Wednesday, and I'm really glad that you're here.